Many people will immediately recognize this image as part of the infamous "binders full of women" meme, touched off by Mitt Romney during the last presidential candidates debate of 2012. Moments after Romney spoke the words, social media users across the nation began to mock them in ways almost too numerous to count. Fewer people will have seen this image before. This image comes from the European release of the 1991 Sega video game Zero Wing. The mistranslation from the Japanese game became a popular phrase among hackers of the era who would use it as a pronouncement of dominance over another's electronic space. In doing so, one of the world's first global electronic memes was born, and this is the focus of this talk. To begin, let me clarify some terminology. Media, as I use the term, will be akin to a complex system of machines and people that distribute information. Memes, as I'm using the word, are a self-replicating unit of culture. In media studies, content that goes viral through social media. And mind control is the influencing of thoughts and ideas of individuals and society. The subject of this talk then is a discussion of how memes come to exist as a media phenomenon, what distinguishes them from other kinds of media content, and the possible influence that they might have on our thoughts and ideas. Media provides a virtual environment that is uniquely different from the physical environment, but probably part of our normal everyday experiences. One of the things I want to emphasize is that there is only one reality. That what we normally consider virtual reality and physical reality are two facets of the same reality. Memes themselves are a type of media content that thrives in virtual environments as a type of simulacrum. They seem to take on a life of their own that often disconnects the signifier from its origin. In other words, they become simulacra. The field of semiotics is concerned with the study of symbols and sign systems. In this equation, the sign, S, is comprised of the signifier, that's SR, and the thing signified, SD. For example, the signifier cat is meaningful because the signifier, the word cat, actually refers to the fluffy, cute animal that we all know is a cat. Simulacra, though, is created when the signifier becomes disconnected from the signified. That is, the thing that the signifier connects to is actually cut from it. In this case, we would use the cat then to refer to something other than the fluffy, cute animal. In our virtual environment, there's really no need to keep the signifier attached to the signified. Signifiers become free-floating in that sense, and we can use them for whatever purpose we want. We can turn them towards our own ends. In terms of mind control, or the influence on people's and society's thoughts and ideas, information divorced from its origin becomes consumed by end users and audience members according to their tastes. It becomes reproduced according to a highly selective consumer culture logic of spectacular representation of a constructed idea of oneself. Consumers then act out their self-selected worldview in the physical world with physical world consequences. The problem with this is that people are not challenged with new ideas, but rather consume challenging ideas with an attitude of sarcasm and irony as if they are entertainment that have no real consequences. In these circumstances, intelligence may be displaced by cleverness, demonstrated in the ability to transform media content from one intended meaning to another in an act of postmodern playfulness. Small communities become solipsistic and self-referential, not open to challenges or influences that might improve the strength of their community, what some on Reddit and other social media sites refer to as the hive mind, or what Baudrillard called neo-tribalism. An example from my own personal experience. These images are of a Tea Party rally and an Occupy Wall Street protest. They were taken out of their original context by someone, cut off from their original significance, and reassembled as a juxtaposition meant to be taken as a critique of state reaction to criticisms of capitalist inequality. When I reposted this image myself on Facebook, most people who responded to it decoded it with the intended irony. However, one of my Facebook friends who I knew supported the Tea Party and not Occupy Wall Street also liked it. I was baffled by this, but on reflection, I realized this was sincerely possible because ironic juxtaposition in itself does nothing to force a confrontation with closely held ideas. So it was possible for this person to actually like the images and what it portrayed for its face value. Social problems are treated as isolated incidences of individual bad luck, dismissed or worse, appropriated in the name of irony and sarcastic humor, but not solved for the people who must live with the consequences of oppression such as racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, etc., which are reduced to simplistic, aesthetic portrayals. Concepts of truth and reality seem to have become so contingent as to be unattainable by the individual. In their place, the masses act out in physical space the beliefs that they've constructed about themselves and the world in virtual space. So, as this exemplifies, racism doesn't go away just because we make a joke about it. The Comedy Central show, Tosh.0, capitalizes on exactly this current of irony running through a large group of audience members' tastes. Such consumers see his appropriation and ironic representation of internet memes, along with his sarcasm, as humor in the context of their worldview. And it's because they understand and are ultimately entertained by what is to them Daniel Tosh's obvious subversion and play with the signifiers. So these audience members are able to laugh along with the program and the silliness of the memes Tosh represents. However, Tosh doesn't require his audience to understand his irony and sarcasm. Many people can also participate as audience members laughing at the people in the content. And this is the problem. The program operates in two time zones: the present postmodern media context, in which audience members consider society to have gotten past issues of race, gender, class, ableism, etc., thus freeing the signifiers to be consumed as ironic representations of a time gone by. The second time zone is a 20th century modernist temporality, in which there's a revival of an audience that laughs at images of the other, quote-unquote, with an attitude of bigotry, superiority, and prejudice. The situation raises other specific problems. For example, incorrect information becomes immortal, as there's no way to delete false information from the internet. 11 years after the 9/11 tragedy, there are still high-ranking American politicians who claim the terrorist attackers made their way to the US through Canada, even though evidence published by investigative bodies demonstrated that not even one of the hijackers had a Canadian connection. Trial by internet and internet vigilantism have become common, and along with it, the same flawed processes of medieval witch hunts. A Victoria Times columnist wrote about Garnet Ford, a man who was wrongly accused of murdering Jamie Kehoe on a bus in Surrey. The accusation didn't come from police, but rather from an anonymous message on Ford's Facebook page. After Kehoe's murder and the anonymous message, Ford started receiving death threats and derogatory messages on his Facebook page accusing him of being Jamie's murderer. He was horrified, but he was innocent. In spite of this, the damage had been done. His boss, in fact, forced him to take time off work, and it made it difficult to financially support his family, including his 4-year-old son and another baby that was on the way. And the story created a great deal of reaction, such that the local homicide unit held a press conference that declared Garnet Ford was never a suspect in the case. More recently, the hacktivist group Anonymous made headlines when they doxed someone who they said was the tormentor responsible for teen Amanda Todd's suicide in British Columbia, Canada. However, they widely distributed personal information that fingered the wrong person. Murakami Wood, a media studies scholar, commented, "One of the problems with this sort of vigilante action or actions taken by organizations that aren't accountable to anybody else is that there's no method of holding these organizations to account." Armchair activism, or as some people call it, slacktivism, has become the extent of many people's political involvement, believing they're doing something to change the world by clicking their mouses. The Kony 2012 campaign is an example of exactly this kind of belief in a remote political proxy. The Kony 2012 video, produced by an organization called Invisible Children, has attracted over 110 million views since its release in early March of this year. The ease of sharing something many viewers thought was meaningful information about a demented warlord and his enslavement of child soldiers in Uganda caused it to become a viral sensation within just a few days of its initial release. However, many of the claims, the strategy advocated in the video, and the organization itself did not maintain integrity once a few people began to look beyond the video. Among many other issues, the Ugandan government pointed out that the warlord in question had been driven out of Uganda years before the video was made. Ugandan citizens expressed frustration that, in addition to numerous factual errors, the video ignored the voices of the black child victims and glorified the white filmmakers. And the Invisible Children organization itself was found to have dubious accounting practices, raising millions of dollars in the name of charitable direct services while in fact spending most of their budget on salaries, travel, and film production. Of course, what's happening now isn't unexpected, and it's not all bad. Many good things have come out as a result of these same phenomena. With every new media invention comes a wave of curiosity about the changes it'll bring for society, both good and bad. And this is just the latest in a long history of media and social change that media studies scholars like myself are interested in studying. So let's take, for example, the print. The printing press has been a crucial technology in numerous events that changed the world. Gutenberg's invention of the movable type press in the 15th century Europe allowed for the first time mass distribution of the Christian Bible, and as a result, literacy grew at an astounding rate, from 5% of European men to greater than 50% by the 16th century. Their ability to read the Bible for themselves rather than rely on theological interpreters, such as priests and ministers, led to theological debates, which in turn resulted in changes to the belief system and the structure of society. For example, the Protestant Reformation in Europe grew from the printing and mass distribution of Martin Luther's document, 95 Theses, the document he had famously nailed to the doors of Castle Church in Wittenberg. The printing press facilitated the mass distribution of his arguments against the sale of church indulgences, a transaction that allowed people to purchase an assured place in heaven from the Catholic Church. The printing press allowed for a much more public and widespread debate over the issue than had previously been possible, and the result was a split from the Catholic Church by people who had decided that Lutheranism, that's the teachings of Martin Luther, were the true path to spiritual redemption.